I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. I live in Northeast Portland, and I often drive past the Nike factory outlet store on MLK. And over the past several years, it's not unusual on the weekends to see long lines of people, sometimes with their kids, waiting to get inside the store because there's a special discount for the soccer team or baseball team or whatever. In fact, I've stood in that line when my kids were younger. And I reported on the plan to build and open that Nike store and the revitalization of MLK 23 years ago.
Private investments by companies like Nike are growing.
Some of the revitalization here has happened with public money. Millions of dollars have been spent along MLK at places like Walnut Park.
Oh my, but the times have changed, and I'm not just talking about my face, and not for the better when it comes to that store, and that is our big story. Driving by, you may just think of the Nike store in Northeast Portland as, well, just another storefront. It's not, though. As I mentioned, it has quite a history for the communities and for the athletes and for all the families that shopped there. The first Nike store in Northeast Portland opened back in 1984. It was Nike's first factory store anywhere in the world. And then that new store was built at the corner of MLK and Knott Street, where it stands today. But it's gone silent. In late September, the store quietly closed, and it has not reopened since. Nike corporate won't explain why, and as investigative reporter Kyla Boshi found, the problem might be bigger than just one store.
The Nike Community Store is a fixture in Northeast Portland. The retail giant stands tall among other storefronts along a busy stretch of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Look inside and you'll find racks of neatly folded Nike gear and rows of shoes, but no customers. The Nike store has been closed for more than a month, and the company won't say why. On its website, Nike said the store will be closed for the next 7 days, a message that's been repeated for weeks. Despite the notice posted online, customers show up almost every day.
Usually stores let you know what's going on because customers want to know. But nothing on the door kind of leaves it suspicious.
Especially when you're paying $5 for gas and then it's like, thanks.
The Nike Community Store has always had an issue with theft, explain several people associated with the store. Although recently, shoplifting has risen to new levels. Criminals have become more brazen, stealing armloads of Nike merchandise and walking out the front door with no fear of being arrested. Security guards contracted by Nike admit they're forbidden from physically stopping shoplifters. It's too risky.
It's obvious that they've stolen something and they're looking to unload it somewhere.
Pastor Paul Greenidge of New Song Community Church has seen people flee the nearby Nike store with stolen shoes and clothing. I mean, you've been here a long time.
30-some years.
30-some years.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything like this?
It's unprecedented. Nothing like this.
KGW's analysis of Portland crime data found since 2019, the Nike Community Store has reported 437 shoplifting cases to police. Citywide, that's second only to the Mall 205 target. Police, prosecutors, and retailers complain shoplifting, or organized retail crime, is a citywide epidemic, largely fueled by drug addiction. Over the past 4 months, several businesses have closed their doors because of crime and security concerns, including a Cracker Barrel, Stanford's, and a couple Starbucks locations. The Nike store is especially noteworthy because of its history.
The credit goes to the black community.
Ron Herndon, along with the Black United Front, approached Nike 38 years ago and urged the company to build its first ever factory store on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, then called Union Avenue, an area once plagued by crime and violence.
Many credit development that began to occur on MLK to Nike's commitment.
When the Nike Portland factory store opened in 1984, it pledged to donate a portion of the store's profits to community-based nonprofits.
Those who shop here and buy here, spend money here, will have a part of that profit returned back to the community.
Since then, the Nike store has donated more than $1 million to the North and Northeast Portland community. In 2000, it moved to a new building after outgrowing the Nike store's original location.
It's not just me. So many people in the community are proud of it.
But the ongoing issues with theft has raised concerns about the store's future.
What's occurring with Nike is very symptomatic of what's happening with people and organizations and businesses all over Portland.
Herndon believes a lack of police resources and prosecution has allowed criminals to tear at the fabric of this community.
Criminals don't care. Criminals do not care about history.
Nike built this community store nearly 40 years ago to increase its involvement in the community and help build up a troubled stretch of the city. Now, Herndon argues it needs support, fending off shoplifters and crime.
Until the city comes up with an answer to this, I don't see it going away. I don't. I don't see this stopping.
Kyle joins me now, and how frustrating and sad for the community and for the folks working there. What did the security guards tell you?
Right, they do have security at that MLK store. These are big guys. Trust me, you would not want to be messing with these guys. But they say, yes, it's frustrating. As part of their contract with Nike, they're not allowed to touch shoplifters. So they may witness someone stealing something right off the rack and running out the door. There's nothing they can do about it. They've got to stand back.
And it's not like we're telling the bad guys that right now, right? They know that, and that's why this is going on. I wonder if the pendulum has swung too far, if people are too hands off, if maybe those guys could mace the bad guys stealing stuff.
Yeah, interesting question. I did speak with another store owner today as in part of an unrelated story for next week, where they actually are pursuing shoplifters. That's unusual, though. Most major retailers, they're telling their employees, don't touch anybody. It's not with the risk to them or their customers. Also, there's the potential for some legal liability.
Yeah. I was at a pharmacy last night. They asked me if I wanted a receipt. I said yes. I'm always worried someone's going to tackle me on the way out. And they said, you know what? We wish we could tackle people. I think there's a real frustration growing here.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it. Moving on to Measure 110. Back in late September, we ran a story about an addiction expert criticizing Oregon's experiment with decriminalizing user amounts of nearly every hard drug you've ever heard of. That happened with the passage of Measure 110. The expert's name is Keith Humphreys. He's with Stanford and is considered a national expert on drug policy. He said Oregon is doing nothing to stop people from using drugs, which is why we have the problems that we have.
Because the West Coast has an individualistic culture with significant tolerance for substance use, social pressures to seek treatment are also often minimal. So on the one hand, we have highly rewarding drugs which are widely available. On the other hand, little or no pressure to stop using them. Under those conditions, we should expect to see exactly what Oregon is experiencing: extensive drug use, extensive addiction, and not much treatment seeking.
In other words, all carrot, no stick. Supporters of the idea to decriminalize drugs sometimes point to Portugal as evidence that treating drug use as a health issue, not a criminal issue, works. Humphreys had something to say about that, too.
Now, it's worth noting that Portugal, which is often cited as the inspiration for Oregon's drug policy, places heavy social and legal pressure on addicted people to seek treatment. The open use and flagrant drug dealing that we see in West Coast cities in this country are virtually absent in Portugal, which shuts them down and uses court pressure to get people into treatment. I've spent a lot of time in Portugal, and I know the people who designed their policy, so please take it from me. Oregon is not following Portugal's example and will not get its results.
Now, I'm not sure about you, but I'm the skeptical sort, and when I hear someone say, take it from me, I start to go, So I thought about contacting someone in Portugal to really run down whether he knew what he was talking about. And then this email came in from a viewer, Cindy. She wrote, motivated by your story, I looked up Portugal. I want to know what works and what doesn't in their experience. Is there any way to invite people in Portugal to talk directly with people in Oregon about their efforts? And that did it. Because Cindy, yes, there is. I emailed Humphreys immediately and asked if he knew someone in Portugal I could connect with. Turns out he did indeed.
I'm the National Coordinator for Drugs and Drug Addiction and the Harmful Use of Alcohol. I'm the head of a service addressed to addiction problems under the Ministry of Health here in Portugal.
Now, I'm going to butcher his name, but Dr. João Gaul is an addiction expert and started Portugal's program back in the year 2000. 22 years later, he says it is a resounding success for the country of 10 million people.
We estimate that when this our strategy that included decriminalization was approved, we estimate that we could have 100,000 people using only heroin. That means 1% of our population. Nowadays, we estimate that we can have around 33,000 people using any kind of drug in a problematic way. So, as for overdoses deaths, for instance, in the 90s, we used to have at least one overdoses death a day. That means 360, 50, 60 something every year. Our last figures came from 2021, and we had 63 overdoses deaths. There's a huge decrease on HIV infections. There's a huge decrease in hepatitis C, with people being treated and cured for their hepatitis. So there's a huge improvement in the health conditions of people who use drugs in Portugal.
Which is terrific to hear from the guy who set up the program, helped set it up. But what about Humphrey's claim that the Portugal system is much different than Oregon's? Well, turns out that's absolutely true. First, a basic outline of Portugal's system as explained by our drug expert there. Drugs are not legalized, they are decriminalized. There is a difference. And only personal use amounts, what someone would use for about 10 days' supply based on the drug, is allowed. Drug dealers and traffickers, well, they're still dealt with in the criminal justice system. But personal use folks are dealt with in the health care system. And if you use it home, you're left alone. You're fine, no problem. But if you're using drugs in public, the police can and do order you to attend a special drug panel where their drug use is discussed. It's part of their social pressure. It's the stick, if you will, to encourage people not to use drugs. It's also something not done under Oregon's system.
Those who are caught using drugs or in possession of small amounts are addressed by the police authorities to a panel, which we call the Commission for Dissuasion of Drug Addiction, a panel under the Ministry of Health, where people are going to be assessed for their needs, the kind of use of illicit substances that they have. But first of all, the first attempt is to identify problematic drug users, people in need of treatment for their addiction, and to have a distinction of those from those who are mere occasional or recreational users.
And by the way, each drug user is identified, and their name and the details of their use and interaction with police are all entered into a central database that is kept by the health department separate from the police. That allows the Ministry of Health to keep track on specific users and see if they're struggling. That's another thing that Oregon's not doing. And just a reminder, the man we are hearing from is Portugal's National Coordinator for Drugs and Drug Addiction.
In any case, what that panel tries to do is to address the real needs of the person. First of all, if someone is addicted, this person is invited to join a treatment facility.
But the person is not forced to take the help. They are, however, told to stay away from certain areas and certain people, and if they violate that, well, it's back in front of the drug panel again. Also, Portugal draws a pretty hard line. Those who are addicted will not be fined, but recreational users, oh yeah, sometimes they are. It's an interesting system of persuading someone to get help. But I asked, what happens if police tell someone to go to the drug panel and then they blow them off?
They incur into a disobedience penalty. So they may be enforced and judged and go before a judge for disobedience, not for the use of drugs, but they may have penalties, including imprisonment for disobeying to an order of the police.
Okay, so it's they're switched then over into the criminal system, more out of the social system.
Yeah.
So that's yet another thing Oregon is not doing. Here it's all carrot and virtually no stick. Portugal forces people who are caught using even personal amounts of drugs in public to show up somewhere and talk about that use.
Most of the people attend the meeting with the commission, so it's not very frequent that people do not show up. Okay, but once they are there, they are invited to join, if in need of that, they are invited to join a treatment facility. And the commission itself makes that phone call instead of telling the citizen, oh, now you must search a place to treat yourself, or you have this phone number. No, they call themselves and they book for the citizen to send Dr. X, I have a client for you. When? Tomorrow, day after tomorrow? Okay, 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Is it okay with you? Is it okay? It's booked. So it is really facilitated, and it's easy to access for free without waiting lists that discourage people to go there. So it works quite smoothly and in a very pragmatic way and centered in the needs of the citizen.
So that's another thing that's different. We're getting quite a list here, aren't we? That does not happen in Oregon. In Portugal, the country has universal health care, so treatment at state facilities are free. And our expert said that private facilities, the state pays 80%, you pay 20%. If you can't afford that, then the state pays 100%. Portugal also focused on making sure they had enough treatment centers and inpatient facilities to help everyone who needs it right away. That's another thing we don't have. Our expert said the vast majority of people caught by police are using cannabis, and most say they do not have a problem with the drugs. But their panel tries to really drill down deeper still to see if there's anything else going on. And I have to say, I was really impressed with how the entire system there is set up to help people, to treat them compassionately.
For instance, I have someone who tells me, no, I have no problems with drugs. It's not a concern. It's not a... But my parents are divorcing, or my father just lost his job, or myself, I have been in trouble with my gender options or whatever. And the panel may invite the person to join. Would you like to discuss this with a psychologist? Would you like to discuss with a social worker that may help your family to deal with the difficulties?
So, to wrap up what we heard, Dr. Humphreys, that first expert, he's exactly right. Oregon's system is nothing like Portugal's. Portugal has a system that puts social pressure on drug users to stop, but it also gives them help with stopping in the form of treatment or psychologists or other things that will get to the root of their problems. And yes, at 10 million people, Portugal is smaller than America, but it's also about 5 times the population of the Portland area. So yes, again, it could be done here. So finally, here's my opinion on all this. So many of us are so frustrated by the constant drug use and open-air markets found in our neighborhoods and cities, and with good reason. But don't just be frustrated. Take action. Do something. The people who can change things here are your local and state lawmakers. The Oregon legislature is going to meet this coming January. You want to take some action? Contact your state lawmakers and demand that they study the Portugal model to see how they can improve Oregon's Measure 110. It's not that hard. If I can find those answers, they can too. And it's something that's done to make this better for all of us. Well, that's my opinion anyway. What's yours? You don't have to agree with me, but you do have to communicate. Send me an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. Our number is 503-226-5090. Now to the race for Oregon's last and newest seat in Congress. It's been called. Let's take a look back at how we ended up with one more member of Congress and the long battle over redrawing the state's district maps when the story returns. Welcome back. Keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We see them coming in. Or give us a call and leave a voicemail at 503-226-5090. Oregon's newest House district now has its newest representative. It's Andrea Salinas, the winner of the District 6 race. She edged out Republican challenger Mike Erickson. Now let's take a look at your new congressional delegation. Salinas joins Republican Lori Chavez DeRemer, who won the 5th district. Both will go to become Oregon's first Latinas in Congress. Chavez DeRemer joins Oregon's only other congressional Republican. That's Cliff Bentz, who was reelected for the 2nd district. Democrat Val Hoyle will represent the 4th district, replacing longtime Congressman Peter DeFazio, who's retiring. And Democrats Earl Blumenauer and Suzanne Bonamici both won re-election. The 6th district was a race that we were watching closely, partly because it's Oregon's newest district, and it came as a result of a long process of redrawing Oregon's district maps. We'll get into all that in a minute. But it meant that there was a whole new voter configuration and no incumbent for voters to react to. It was a competitive race with at least 16 people who ran in the primary, along with Salinas and Erickson. There was an activist funded by a crypto billionaire, a former Multnomah County commissioner, and a state lawmaker, among others.
So, how did we get here? Oregon's last new seat in Congress came way back in 1982. But the 2020 census showed Oregon's population jumped by more than 10% to more than 4.2 million people. And that earned us a 6th seat in the U.S. House. Then the state had to figure out where to put that new district. All the congressional districts by law must have equal population. Oregon state lawmakers were tasked with redrawing the map, with Democrat Andrea Salinas as the chair of the House Redistricting Committee. And guess what? She just won that new seat. It took a while to land on what we have now. Democrats and Republicans tried to work together on the new map. Big surprise, that did not go well. Each side wanted to draw the districts to include more of their own voters. The 2nd district in eastern and southern Oregon was always going to be safe for Republicans, and most of the districts around the metro area and Eugene were expected to go to Democrats. The Democrats drew their own maps favoring themselves, and the Republicans sued, calling it gerrymandering.
It's not that there's one line. It's that the sum total of the districts create an outcome that is already predetermined.
So the Republicans drew up their own map, but
they didn't give a good alternative.
Republicans tried to make the new district a 50-50 split between them and the Democrats, but that didn't work. In the end, the Oregon Supreme Court dismissed the challenges, and the state legislature approved the new boundaries drawn by the Democrats. So with no incumbent in the new 6th district, the race for the seat was wide open. As the general election shook out, the 6th went to a Democrat, the state lawmaker who chaired the House Redistricting Committee. But the 5th district flipped red, and Republican Lori Chavez DeRemer took the seat held by Democrat Kurt Schrader, giving Oregon 4 Democrats and 2 Republicans going to Congress. And that's how we got here.
The KGW Great Toy Drive is here. If you want to donate, just use your camera on your phone right now and scan the QR code on the screen. It'll take you to a list of toys that you can send straight to KGW. Also, this is the week of giving. In that spirit, internet provider Ziply Fiber is donating $5 for each new installation it makes. You can also drop off a new unwrapped toy at any IQ Credit Union, Fred Meyer, or local Toyota dealership. Help bring some kids some joy. It's local kids. It's the holiday season. Get involved. All right, keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We'll finish the show up right after this. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our story, well, that